Hello, my name is Mr. Rogers, and you're watching the video lecture for the second half of section 1-2 in your chemistry book, and this is going to be on balancing chemical equations. This is a very tricky skill to learn, so when we first start doing this, don't be surprised if we get frustrated and it just doesn't come to you right away. This is a skill that just takes time to understand the process of how it works to balance an equation. So on this first page, guys, you don't have to write anything down. This is our lesson objectives. Just want to talk about those real quick. Our lesson objectives for balancing chemical equations are to recognize an equation is unbalanced. What does that look like? And then secondly, use the law of conservation of mass to balance the atoms in an equation so they're the same number of atoms on both sides of the equations, the reactant side and the product side. So there's two things we need to think about before we start balancing equations. The first one is the law of conservation of mass. And what the law of conservation of mass says is mass is neither created or destroyed in ordinary physical or chemical reactions. And so when we mean mass, in this case we mean atoms. We can't destroy atoms. They can't disappear after a reaction, or all of a sudden we have more than we had before. That has to be the same number of atoms on either side, the reactant side and the product side. So either side of the arrow has to have the same number of atoms for each element. And so what we do to balance an equation is, when counting the atoms on either side, you multiply the number of atoms, that's the subscript, of each element by the coefficient that is before. That's the bigger number in front of the molecule's formula. So we multiply those two to count the number of atoms. And on each side, those atoms have to be equal. And so we are going to have an example here we're going to walk through together and really walk through the process of how to think about balancing the equation. So this will be one of many equations that we're going to attempt to balance. So on here, for balancing equations, we have hydrogen, H2 plus Cl2, that's chlorine. And there's our arrow, there's our reaction happening, and that produces HCl, that's hydrochloric acid. And what I like to do in balancing equations, we want to count the atoms initially. So how many atoms do we have right now? So on the reactant side, this is our reactant side. Let's count the atoms here. So we have, write our symbol for hydrogen is right there. And these blue dots are going to represent our hydrogen. And so right now we have 2 hydrogen atoms on the reactant side. Next we come to chlorine. So chlorine, symbol Cl, and we have 2 atoms of chlorine. And I like to kind of divide the board in half. So we have our left side's reactants. On the right-hand side here is that's our product, what's being made. And so what is made is HCl, that's hydrochloric acid. So again, we write out our elements. We have hydrogen, and we have chlorine. So right now, we have, we don't write it, but there's a 1 right there and right there. So we have just 1 atom of hydrogen and 1 atom of chlorine. And so if I was to count the 2 atoms from each side, so right now, hydrogen only has 2 on this side. On this side, it's 1, so it's unbalanced. I've lost or destroyed an atom. I have to find a way to balance that back out. So what I can do is, again, I can't change, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted an H there. I can change the coefficient, the number in front of the molecule. So if I want more hydrogen, I can put a 2 for the coefficient here in front of hydrochloric acid. So this now means I have 2 HCl molecules. And so I'm going to recount my atoms on this side. And so now, remember, I multiply the coefficient, this number, by the subscript. So 2 times 1 gives me 2 hydrogen atoms. But since it's a molecule, you have to multiply that 2 by everything in that molecule. So also multiply the 2 again by the 1 for chlorine. So 2 times 1 gives me 2 chlorine atoms now. So what I can go from there is I can recount. I stop and I recount. What I can also do is I clone this here, so it should pull out. There's my second molecule of HCl. So now I have 2 HCl molecules. So let's recount the atoms. On the reactant side, over here, I have hydrogen is 2. On the product side, hydrogen is 2. Chlorine on the reactant side, Cl, is 2. And over here, on the product side, chlorine is also now 2. So this equation would be balanced with the correct coefficients in place for this. So in balancing equations, the biggest thing, and we can even tap and we can reveal our answer down here also, which we are correct. We change that coefficient. So in balancing equations, you can always change that coefficient number in front. You can never change the subscript. Just keep that in mind. And you keep changing that coefficient until you count the atoms on both sides, the product side and the reactant side, until those sides and atoms, number of atoms are equal. So, 8th grade. I thank you guys for watching this video today. Like I said, we'll practice this a lot more. Always can come back to this video, watch, rewatch it if we're confused on this skill. I thank you for your time and have a good day.